Okay, last part of chapter 7 on the different kinds of listening responses. So the first four that we looked at are the ones that are less evaluative and are less directive, I should say, and more reflective. Then these next four are going to be more directive and less reflective. Okay, so when we think of support, a supporting listening response, we don't really think that that's a bad thing because it reveals solidarity with the speaker's situation. Because sometimes you can be in a situation where the feedback that you're giving the person is just based on what they say, and then that can make someone a little upset, and they might say, but how do you feel about this? So that would be a good time to give a supportive response. The book has some really good examples on page 216, but these are the kind of support you can do. Agree, oh, you did absolutely the right thing. And an offer of help, please let me know what I can do for you. Praise would be, you are doing a great job. Reassurance could be, I know that this is tough, but I have confidence that you can handle it. And diversion, look, squirrel. No, it could be something like you're telling them a story, or you're saying, you know what, let's go out for a cup of coffee and we can talk about it, don't think about something different. Okay, so support is good when it is sincere and not when it's like, oh, please let me know what I can do for you. And then they say, could you give me a ride somewhere? And you go, nope, can't do it. Ugh. Also remember that sometimes people they're not in a place to accept your support. Maybe they're too angry about the situation, or they need to process it first. Support is also, when you're supporting someone, you need to focus on now, the here and now, not the then and there. And I keep going back to the example of my mom, who is a lovely, caring woman, but she likes to say, well, remember, it'll be better tomorrow. And while that might be true, I have to deal with today rather than tomorrow. So that kind of support is not always appreciated. Okay, the next one is analyzing, where you are giving an interpretation of the speaker's message. It in some ways seems like paraphrasing, because in paraphrasing you're putting the message in your own words, but in analyzing you're going a little bit deeper. You're offering an alternative meaning. I'm like so stressed out by this situation, and the person says to you, well, I think what's really bothering you is, if it's wrong, it can make the person really upset. It can cause the person to get defensive, or they could be very confused. So just make sure that your analysis is offered tentatively. You might say, it sounds to me like, instead of stating it as an absolute. Only analyze if there's a reasonable chance of being correct. Like if you don't know the person well enough, or you have no idea of the situation, don't do it. Also, make sure the other person will be receptive. Sorry, I'm stirring my tea. As I said before, if the person is just really upset about something, they're not going to be receptive. So you need to let them cool down a little bit. And make sure that when you're doing analysis, it's because you want to help the person, not because you want to score some points. In the area of chapter 7 where I have videos, there's a short video from Everybody Loves Raymond, where Raymond uses analysis, and I'm not sure if he's doing it because he wants to help his daughter, or if he's doing it to score some points off of his wife. I'm not really sure. We could talk about that after you've seen it. All right. Even more directive would be evaluating. Sometimes we see this as judging or judgment or criticism. So basically, I mean, you are evaluating, you're appraising what the speaker has said. It can be favorably, it can be unfavorably. And people say, but if I'm telling you you did a good job, why is that a bad thing? Well, why do I need you to tell me that I have done a good thing? At one point, I had gone to see my doctor. I hadn't seen her for a year, and in that time, I had lost a lot of weight. And she said to me, "I am so proud of you." And I thought, that's a really weird thing for one adult to say to another adult. I didn't need that kind of evaluation from her. So it's tricky. Maybe support. You must be so proud of yourself would have been a better way to say it. So we might say to someone, I'm just giving you constructive criticism, but as with analysis, are you doing it to really help the other person, or are you doing it because you're feeling superior in some way? Okay. The last kind of listening response, I think, is everyone's favorite. It tends to be the go-to response for most people. In fact, I have had people say, well, if they didn't need advice, why did they say anything? Why did they bring it up? Well, think about it. Have you ever been in a situation where you've just wanted to vent? You just needed to get something off your chest. You didn't need someone to come to the rescue and say, well, what you should do is. So this is frequently more unhelpful than it is helpful. And think about it. It's especially not helpful when it doesn't offer the best suggestion for how to act. It's also, we don't like to see ourselves necessarily as the person who needs advice. That's like, well, can't I solve my problems by myself? If you're always giving advice, it can set up a situation where it allows the other person to avoid responsibility for their own decisions. And honestly, this is a hard sell for a lot of my students in the past. People often don't want advice. So if you give advice when they don't want it, they're certainly not going to accept it. So when you're thinking, oh, should I give this person advice? Think about it. Is the advice needed? Is the advice wanted? And if you're not sure, how about saying, it's kind of a perception check. Would you like my advice? Or do you just want to vent? Okay, so that given in the right sequence means give advice when someone has asked you for it. Is the advice coming from an expert? I have to tell you, when my kids were little and they're in the grocery store, and very rarely they misbehaved, if someone said, well, if I were there, Mom, I would. Like, seriously? You don't even have any kids. You have no right to tell me what I should do. Right? We are more likely to accept advice from someone who is a close friend or trusted friend or friend, someone in our lives who we really trust and respect. And possibly most importantly is the advice offered in a way that allows the person to save face. Like, you don't start it with, well, any idiot knows that. You would just say, I know that you're doing the best you can. You do some support first, and if you want my advice, here's what I would tell you. So now, with these 8 ways that you can give a listening response, which type should you use? Well, of course, bottom line in anything is, it depends. And I know you haven't asked for advice, but I'm going to give it anyways. You should start from the left side of that continuum. Start with the kinds of responses that are more reflective, because sometimes people just want to know that they are heard. So silent listening, questioning, paraphrasing. I would say those are the best 3. Empathizing and supporting are the next best ones to use, and really go lightly on the evaluating, analyzing, and advising. So think about the situation and match your response to the best nature of the problem. Think about the other person. What is your relationship to that person? What kind of a day are they having? And also think about yourself. What are your weaknesses? What are your strengths? If you know that you're bad at paraphrasing, don't paraphrase. Maybe try questioning instead. So, this is the overview of the entire chapter. Please, if you have any questions, please post them in the discussion, and I'm going to add another thread that allows you to post any questions that you had about this chapter that weren't answered. I don't have to be the only person answering these questions. You are all welcome to jump in and share your insights. Have a nice day. If I can turn this thing off, I will turn this. I just burned myself on my tea.